welcome to the Walking Dead UK podcast. It's Entertainment Talks podcast for The Walking Dead World Beyond on AMC and Amazon. I'm your host Matthew. Joining me today, my co-host is David. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Good. We're here today to talk about Season 1, Episode 2, the second episode of World Beyond, called The Blaze of Gory. Not Blaze of Glory, Blaze of Gory. What do you think of this second episode?
It's a good title. I like it, but yeah, it's a little bit. This show's a little bit slow still at the moment. I mean, we are still trying to sort of find out more about the characters, and I think one of the interesting things has been this episode is we got to see a bit more of the when everything went to hell, and the sort of flashback bits I actually found slightly more interesting than the story as they are at the moment, I think. Yeah, I mean, it's the big tire fire, which is the Blaze of Gory is the thing that they're referring to. That I thought was an interesting idea, because tire fires do burn for a ridiculous length of time, and so I thought that was kind of an interesting thing to put in. And I like the characters as well. I want it to just be a bit quicker than it has been previously,
Yeah. I really like this episode a lot. I don't think I love this episode necessarily, but I really like its ideas quite a lot. I think there's some interesting. I've spoken quite a lot recently about different zombie properties and their sort of set pieces and things like that. I quite like the set pieces in here. I feel like this episode, although it is sort of slow in an interesting way, because you've got, I think it's like 2 or 3 nights that go past, because I kept sort of counting how many times we get to nighttime, and I think it was 3 different times, and we do end on a night as well with the episode. The episode felt a bit more grounded, a little bit more realistic, because I think we're all a little bit too used to like I don't know, these established characters like Daryl and Carol, and even on Fear, you've got like Alicia and Morgan and Dwight, and these are, adult characters that have been killing walkers for quite some time, and then you've got these teenage kids that haven't really done very much with walkers at all, and you can see I think there's 2 different scenes. I think they're both with with Hope, sorry, and she's like really struggling to kill these 2 walkers, and that felt realistic to me, that she wouldn't. I mean, it's the other sister at the start of the episode that does try to kill that particular walker, and she's really struggling, but it makes sense that she is, because she's still young, she's not quite established how to. I mean, she's been taught by Felix in the flashbacks and that these different lessons of how to kill one, and then the worry about getting tired and the effects that can have, and how that can kind of defeat you in the fight or whatever, but it felt a bit realistic to me that these kids didn't simply just go out there and sort of get the business done.
It's interesting, because I've actually when we were looking around for recaps of the show, I stumbled across somebody who specifically criticizes that actually at the start, and he's like, this is just a way of, it's a really unimaginative way of building tension. The fact that these kids are having, we're used to being able to kill walkers, and the kids having an issue with killing walkers seems just like a lazy way of building tension. But I'm kind of with you on that. I actually think that the entire point of this show is the fact that you're following this group that really have zero experience. They've been taught a certain amount of theory in what you're supposed to do, but they've not done it. And I mean, whilst they are the dead that you're up against, you are still killing something, and yes, it's something quite scary that's trying to eat you, but you are still, it is still not so much taking a life, but it is still physically kind of unanimating something. You are still killing something, and that's quite a big thing, and they have no experience of it. They're apart from what they've been taught, and I think they've had this. They've grown up in this protective environment, and it sort of makes sense to me that they would struggle with this, and they wouldn't be able to necessarily do it straight away, That makes perfect sense to me. I don't see that as a way of. I mean, just because we're used to seeing them kill things, I don't think it.
But you can't look at Iris and Hope and then look at Carol and Michonne and think like, oh yeah, they should all be the same.
Yeah.
Because Carol, I know it's been 10 years still, but look at how much Michonne and like Carol have gone through on the main show, and then look at what Iris and Hope have gone through, and then look at the difference in age between them. It's just fundamentally sort of different. And the interesting thing as well, even if you look at Ellie in The Last of Us 2, she's only 19 in that game, and these characters are younger than her as well, because these characters are supposed to be 15, 16 or something like that, sort of middle teen kind of years. So even if you do look at a character like Ellie and all that she's been through and stuff, even she's still older than these characters. But
it's, to me, it's less to do with even the age. It's to do with the environment you're being brought up in. I mean, you've got kids in both Fear, and you've got kids in the main show as well, and such as Judith. And the difference is that they've grown up in this world. They've had to deal with it. They've had to confront it. Whereas these are a group of kids who have basically been protected all their lives. They've never had to really go out. They're aware the walkers are out there. They've seen them, but they've never had to confront them face to face.
Yeah.
So I don't actually think that this makes perfect sense. You're dealing with it. It is almost a case of, what if you took somebody from now and just dropped them in the middle of a zombie apocalypse, and
kind of, yeah.
Suddenly you're gonna be faced with actually killing these things, and as an adult it's maybe slightly more difficult to see that, but as a child, I mean, they're supposed to be 16, 17. I mean, so they're not children, but they are young,
still very young. Yeah.
And you're for the first time you're seeing animated corpses coming directly at you.
Mm-hmm. It felt very realistic and kind of grounded to me in that way, and that was very, very interesting to see, because we've seen it a little bit sometimes in the main show, like with Carl and with Judith and certain other characters, but these are pretty much characters that are completely on their own. They've had to escape from this community sort of place, and I thought that was quite good. There's set pieces in the episode I thought were quite good as well. You've got a couple of different ones. We'll talk a bit more about them as we get to them in the recap. No Elizabeth in this episode, the leader character, after her massacre last week. I found that quite interesting as well, because it's going to be interesting to see, like, okay, when we see her next, what is she going to be doing? How is she going to kind of be reacting to the situation, and what is she going to do about Iris, Hope, Felix, and the other Huck as well, the other character. So
what's been interesting to me as well is if you listen to the Geek Town podcast, I've been catching up on Fear, and I'm working my way through season 5 of that right now, and this group, the Three Circles group, pops up in that a lot more as well. That kind of, there is an episode of that where they pop up, and you see the weapon that they have with the forks on the end, and so this group, which I'd only really seen flying Rick off in a helicopter, previously, and now that it's coming into Fear as well, because I'm getting caught up with that. So it's interesting seeing how this seems to be a sort of, an overall kind of end game thing that they're, I mean, not necessarily the end game, but bringing to a head at some point, either next year or the year after, that they are kind of pulling all this together towards this interesting group that is not a comic book group, is it? As far as we're aware,
no.
It's something that they've been invented for the TV show. So I'm really intrigued to see how they end up pulling all that together. And I think what we're sort of going to end up doing overall in the sort of wider Walking Dead universe is, when the main show finishes, I think it's going to finish with something to do with that group and an explanation of who they are and more details about that, I suspect, and then that will be almost their kind of end game, and then there'll be whatever they carry on with after that. But I think part of the thing with World Beyond is it's sort of, I think it's going to expand that world more.
Yeah, because we're seeing more of it in this
Yeah.
show. So, but yeah, one of the most interesting things to me about like zombie shows and these sort of survival shows is just seeing how different types of characters react to those situations, and like what weapons can they pick up, how can they use them, what are they going to try to do, you know, are they going to try and get into a building? If they can't do that, where are they going to run to? How are they going to fight these walkers and stuff? And then when they come across like human threats, how are they going to deal with that? And yeah, it was just very interesting to see that in this episode. Plus you've got Iris and Hope dealing with walkers, and then you've got Felix and Huck that are doing the same thing. But again, they're different characters, and it was quite interesting as well as Iris and Hope were going to these different locations, and then you slowly saw Felix and Huck were in the previous location, them sort of seeing what they'd left behind and that sort of stuff. I thought that was quite interesting as well. So, because they were sort of right on their tail, weren't they, in the episode as well. So
yeah,
we'll see how that works out. But yeah, we'll talk about more of the episode as we get into the recap. Let's take a quick break, go into some housekeeping, and we will see you in a minute.
Hey there, I'm Aaron Holman, host of Eye to Eye, a weekly podcast talk show all about passion.
I have this passion and this fire within me that burns brighter than the fire around me.
Flow.
With performing, there's always a story to tell, whether it's my own or not.
And creativity.
I go, he's more than cute, he's creative.
All with an LGBT twist. Make sure to check out Eye to Eye, that's EYE, number 2, letter I. And rate and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen in today.
I'm Christy.
And I'm Jackie.
And we are Killer Fun. We explore the intersection of crime and entertainment every other week.
For as long as people have been communicating, they have been talking about who did what to whom, and is that socially acceptable?
Because the boundaries of society,
crime,
and entertainment have always gone hand in hand.
The more salacious,
or weird,
the better. From books and movies
to television shows and games,
we look at how life and art imitate and inform one another.
And we can't get together and not laugh. So let's face it, there's going to be laughing.
Killer Fun is available anywhere you listen to podcasts, so join us.
If you'd like to get started with a domain name and a website today, just click on the link in the show notes and that will take you over to Kualu to get started. They also have a live support chat system that you can use, which is in the bottom right hand corner. So get started with a new website and domain name today with Kualu. Hey everybody, if you would like to get the ad-free versions of all of our podcasts and support Entertainment Talk along the way, all you need to do is head over to patreon.com/entertainment talk. Sign up either as a creator or as a Patreon, there's no difference there. That's just the option for either becoming a creator now or just staying as a patron for the moment. And then all you need to do is support us at the $1 level tier. That will get you access to all of the ad-free podcasts that we've done in the past, and get you access to all the ad-free podcasts in that month as well. So it's a great way to support us on Entertainment Talk and to get rid of the ads and get your ad-free podcasts. You can also become a patron at the $3 level tier. That gets you access to ad-free podcasts and allows you to redeem a review of a TV show or a film of entirely your choice. That's one per month for either a TV show or a film review, which is at the $3 level tier. As always, thank you very much for listening. Back to the show. Alrighty, recently on Entertainment Talk, a new Breaking Bad podcast is out today, Season 1, Episode 6. Gosh, I can't believe that's already got its 6th episode released. So yeah, Season 1, Episode 6, and then the season finale episode will be next week, and then the week after that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let the season finale episode be out for a week, and then we can record that feedback podcast as well. So pretty much we'll maybe plan to do that in 2 weeks. Once the season finale podcast has been out for a week, everyone can, you know, have a chance to listen to it and all that. So Season 1, Episode 6 we're up to at the moment for Breaking Bad, so check that out, the Becoming Heisenberg podcast. Gaming talk this week, we talked about the strange, interesting situation with Spider-Man being recast on the PS5 version of the PS4 remaster game. So if you remember, in 2018, Insomniac Games made a new version of Spider-Man and had that as, you know, Sony's exclusive game. Basically the character model, not the voice actor, they still got the same voice actor, Yuri Lowenfold, but they've got a new face to the character, so a new character model, a new actor for that, but that's going to be affected on the PS5 remastered version of the PS4 game. You can of course listen to more of what that's about on the podcast. We got quite a bit of information on PS5 backwards compatibility. There was 10 games listed, released, that won't be backwards compatible on PS5 that are PS4 games, and Sony also attempted to explain 3 different methods of how you can move your PS4 save files onto your PS5. So we talked about that and a whole bunch of other things as well. Did the chat podcast for this month, or for last month actually, for September, talking about how the month went. It went very, very well. Thank you to everybody who keeps listening to the podcast that we keep making, because that's how this works. Talked a little bit about holidays, or sort of lack thereof, and just the situation with that at the moment, and talked a little bit about content updates, what you can kind of expect from now until the end of the year, the kind of uncertainty around films at the moment, and that sort of thing. So you can check that out if you want to. That's the chat podcast for this month. Let's Play Sundays for Iron Man VR. If you've got a PlayStation 4 and you've got if you've got a VR system, please go and play Iron Man VR, because it's excellent. And you can go and see what the game is like and watch me play it on this week's episode of Let's Play Sundays. I did actually record about 6 of those, so get ready for a few more of those to get released. But a very, very good game. I did actually review the game as well, spoiler free, so if you're curious about more of that, you can also listen to the review if you search for Iron Man on the website as well. Diabolical 7 for the boys. It's now finished its 2nd season with its 8 episode, the season finale. We did talk about it a little bit on this week's Geek Town Radio with me and David, but me and Robert did the season finale podcast on Saturday. Has been renewed for a 3rd season. We know that Jensen Ackles is going to be in the 3rd season, and we also know that they've got a spin-off in development as well. So look forward to much more of the boys in the future. It's doing incredibly well, what I hear, for Amazon. I mean, they wouldn't have ordered all that if it wasn't. So yeah, very, very good stuff over there. Gaming talk last week. We talked about the Resident Evil movie and the reboot happening with that, and the casting information, some interesting choices. We talked about Cyberpunk 2077 going gold. That's going to be released next month. We talked about the crunch story involved with the CD Projekt Red developers and how we sort of feel about that. So there's that as well. And then of course we've got the Walking Dead podcast. So season 10 finale last week for the main show for season 10, episode 16. The pilot episode of World Beyond from last week, and there will possibly later today, if not maybe tomorrow, the season 6 premiere for Fear the Walking Dead. So have a look out for all of that on entertainmenttalk.org and on podcast platforms. Let's go into the recap we've got. The episode picks up where the kids left off as Iris attempts to take down her first empty. For some reason they call them that in this show. We can talk about that in a second. She tries to remember Felix's lessons, because they sort of cut back and forth between her attempting to kill this empty and Felix sort of discussing different methods. Go for the legs, try not to run out of stamina, this and that, on how to kill one of them. Things don't go smoothly. She falls with the zombie into a trench, which leaves the walker impaled on a metal rod. Iris goes to finish it off, but throws up on it instead, and she's unable to. And in the end, all 4 of them walk away from this walker, which Felix and Huck find later. But of course, they are on their trail. So again, very interesting start to the episode. Although they have had these lessons of how to kill walkers, it's different when you go to actually do it, because you're dealing with this living undead thing that's trying to eat you, like you discussed. Interesting as well that I sort of like how they write Felix as part of this, because as she's trying to stab it in the head or swipe its legs or do this and that, and then you're thinking okay, she's probably getting more and more tired, and then the next thing that Felix brings up is okay, if you're at this for too long, basically you're going to run out of stamina, and then you're really going to be in trouble because you're not going to have any energy. I just thought this was a great way to put all this together, and it shows her kind of struggle, and the group kind of is trying to insist that they go in there and help her, and she's like, no, I can do this on my own, sort of thing, which she kind of can't, I guess. And then just ends up pushing it into this ditch onto the metal rod. I thought this was a really good way to start off the episode. You kind of, because you got the tease at the end of the pilot last week of okay, these kids are going to be out in the world on their own, no parents around. Yes, they've got these cool little fork things or sticks, whatever they are, but they're still, like I said, going to be on their own. And we see straight away at the start of this episode a example of that. So I really like this scene. How about you?
Yeah, I I think, yeah, like we've said, it's interesting that, particularly seeing that they apparently had a sort of zombie killing 101 class back when they were in the encampment in the I can't remember what it was called, but the place that they were in. Yes, community place. So yeah, I thought it was interesting that he clearly had been teaching them these lessons, and the sort of basics of how to kill a zombie and what you should and you shouldn't do, and I really liked how they kind of opened this. And as I said before, it sort of makes sense. They've never had to face this directly before. Most of the zombies they are facing are fairly old ones by the looks of it. I mean, I think it would be even worse if it was somebody that was recently turned, because it would still look very much human at that point. And I think that would be even harder for them, because it is, as I say, it should be a difficult thing for them to do. Yeah. You hopefully have not been raising little like psychopaths, and so killing anything should be a difficult thing to do, even if it is the undead that is coming at you. It shouldn't be really straightforward, and certainly getting over that initial kill, which is what they're all trying to do at the moment. They all know that it's the right thing to do, and they know in theory the basics of how to do it. But I could understand why that would be quite a difficult thing to get over to start off with. Yeah. Certainly the first one. Once you get it and you see how straightforward it is and you've done it a bit, then and you kind of get your head in the right sort of space. But I think it makes perfect sense to me. And her sort of her being unable to do it and them just sort of leaving, and he just sort of, I think Felix makes a point in that talk about you're better off to avoid than you are to try and take them on if you can.
You don't have to kill all of them. So, but at certain points you do, obviously, because it just would have been quite wildly unrealistic to me if they'd left this camp and they all turned into Rick and Michonne and like they just had no problems. Plus, you would actually take quite a lot take quite a lot away from this episode, if you did that, because then you kind of not completely block character development, but you don't do it naturally, So, because we do get Iris and Hope, they do face two different walkers, in the episode. She wasn't just going to come out of this building and then just, take its head clean off like Michonne would do. So, I thought that was quite interesting. Yeah, what do you think of this empties term?
It makes sense. I mean, it seems to be how they've been taught. We've seen a few different names to sort of, walkers, obviously.
On Fear, because I can't remember.
The empties on this, they're walkers on the main show.
Pretty sure they're walkers on Fear as well.
I've heard them called growlers before.
It's not a dog.
I know, but I can't remember what the main term is they use.
I kind of just think that for the Walking Dead universe, they just stick to the universal name of
Well,
walkers.
I don't know. To me, it actually makes sense. I quite like the fact that everybody's got their own term for it, and in some ways, it's one of those things that you can tell what area somebody comes from as to how they refer to them, So, like when in Fear, when Morgan shows up, he refers to them as walkers, and that's not what they've been referring to them as, So it sort of gives you some context as to where this person has previously come from just by what they call them. So I don't know. I'm okay with them actually using slightly different names for them, because everybody would have different names for them because it was a universal event that happened everywhere. But people haven't been communicating of like, well, we should call them this. There isn't a mass media saying they are this one thing. So everybody has their own name for them, and that I quite like that. I think it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm still going to call them walkers anyway, but
yes.
But yeah, the walker falls into the metal rod, and then they basically leave it. So, and again, it kind of makes sense that she would throw up. This thing is, revolting. It's not nice, is it? So, yeah. Plus, she's just been worn out, and she's probably So that made sense to me as well. Moving on to Felix and Huck work to catch up to the kids. Felix flashes back to a painful time before the apocalypse when he was a teenager and his father kicked him out of the house for being gay. That's the first kind of piece of that, because we see a little bit sort of later on as well.
Yeah,
there's also a flashback in this episode with Felix. It's literally about 4 seconds long of him walking along this bridge. One of those helicarrier things, whatever it is, jets, whatever, fly over his head for about 5 seconds, and then that's it. And I was like, okay, you could probably just take that out of the episode. But anyway, very, very big sort of shame here that he kicks him out for being gay, and then he says, he tries to even hand his dad money. He leaves a check on the table. Whether or not he cashes that, we don't actually know. But interesting bit of backstory on Felix. I do really like what they're doing with the flashbacks, because last week we had all the flashbacks towards the was it called Drop from the Sky flashbacks with the plane and everything. And then we saw the explanation of with the pregnant woman and what happened with some of the mums in the show, and this gives a bit of background to Felix this week, and I quite like the way that they're putting these into the episodes, because I don't feel like we need a full flashback episode maybe at any point, and not to go back to Scott Gimple and blame him again, but that's probably what he would have done. So stop the entire story and go back for an episode of a complete bottle episode of this is what's happened before. So no, I like the way that they're doing this. You're getting little bits of each of their past, of how they sort of got to where they got to, which I think is interesting. Because we don't know anything about these characters, so they're all completely new to us. So I like the way that they're doing that as well. And there's a little bit of a different colour aesthetic in there with some of them as well. So that's pretty good. I quite enjoyed that. What do you think of him kicking him out and the scenes with his dad?
Yeah, I mean, scenes like that, it's always fairly brutal to watch. That to think that there are people that are that ignorant out there still, that there is still a generation that would kick their own children out for being gay, is it's just such a ridiculous thing that I find it quite infuriating whenever I see things like that, and so it is sort of heartbreaking when you see stuff like that, and I thought it was interesting that that's the sort of background, and then that comes background again towards the end of the episode of we see the sort of aftermath of that, it's just heartbreaking that there are still people like that in the world.
I can definitely agree with that. It's even more kind of painful as well, not just the fact that he's kicked him out for being gay, but the fact that he's been supporting his dad, and he's been saying I've been working hard, not just for himself and making a man of himself or whatever, but he's been supporting his dad, who clearly isn't quite all there, it just kind of adds to his pain. So I do certainly feel some sympathy for Felix here, and it's going to be interesting to continue to follow him, because in the current timeline sort of thing, or in the sort of modern not the modern timeline, the current timeline sort of thing, with him and Huck kind of going after the 4 kids and that, he's sort of looked at a little bit more like the enemy in that way, but we kind of know there's a bit more to him now, which I think is good. So the duo find the walker that Iris left, knowing they are on the right trail. In another flashback, Felix returns to his parents' home as the outbreak begins, but they don't even let him in the house when there's God knows what going on. There's all sorts of what would you call them? Jets? It's like the things that are dropping the bombs.
There's sort of fighter jets and bombers going overhead, trying to sort of bomb things and stuff. And and I mean, this was just the fact that their ignorance will go to the point of, your child shows up and he's clearly trying to help, and despite everything, still loves his parents, and they could be in danger just as much as he's, and they won't even let him in the house. Just you do kind of get to the point of thinking, screw these people, let them die, let zombies come along and eat them. They're just terrible people, but they are his parents, so you can understand why he's trying, but
because they sort of elevate this in a way where, sure, it's still terrible that he kicked him out for being gay and he's been supporting him and stuff, but then to actually go to this clear crisis situation when there's bombs being dropped all throughout the city and there's walkers around, and then his dad still doesn't let him in, is just pretty disgusting. But again, it adds to the character of Felix, which is the whole point of this. So because we're not going to be seeing the dad anytime soon. So no. So the bit that I read before, they do find the walker that Iris left, so they're kind of on their trail already, and it was just interesting to keep going back to the scene the place that they were at, and to see what they kind of left behind and what Felix and Huck thought that they should do next. I thought that was quite good. The kids take a break, and Iris gets to know Silas more as Hope speaks to Elton, who is taking photos of a dead empty, fascinated by their physiology. He brings up his mother and mentions how he believes they are in an extinction event, theorizing they have about 15 years until the human race is wiped out completely, something he's accepted. It's a very bleak outlook on life, I suppose. I know that yes, they are in a crisis situation, and then they are in an extinction type event where people are turning into walkers, and it is pretty grim. But I actually find him, he's kind of like a young Eugene in a way, isn't he? Like all this sort of science stuff he's trying to do, and the way he's speaking about the world.
Yeah, there is a certain amount of that.
Yeah. And he speaks a bit more English instead of Shakespearean, like what Eugene does. So what do you think of the conversation there?
I thought this was a really interesting conversation, because it shows you his outlook on the world, and he's like, we're probably the last humans ever to be alive. We are probably not going to survive this. This is, I can't remember whether this was slightly later, but they come up with he's talking about the fact that they're endlings, and although they go into a bit more specifics about endlings in terms of an extinction event, of being the sort of the endling being the very last member of a species, but. I thought this was kind of interesting, just to show where his brain is at. The fact that that he obviously believes that they are the last generation, but he's still fascinated by the world, and he's still wanting to know where they got to, and he's still trying to and how they got to that point, and wanting to catalogue the thing which is potentially quite possibly the downfall of the human race. So I just thought that it was quite interesting. I found Elton a very interesting character. I do really enjoy what they're doing with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've only had 2 episodes of the show, and they've already done a fair bit of work with these 4 characters. I like the way that seemingly with each different week we're going to get flashbacks with different characters, because last week we had, was it Hope? Or I think it might have been Iris. And then they go with Felix this week, and all the backstory with his dad. I think that they're just tying that all in really, really well together. And then just sort of stopping to take breaks because they realistically need to. That's going back to one of the earlier points about like the sort of pacing of the episode. It is kind of realistic to me that, okay, they try and get to this area where there's smoke. That's going to take time. They're not just going to get there in like five minutes worth of episode, and they're going to get to nighttime eventually. They're going to have to stop, take shelter, make sure that they're safe, which they go into this little treehouse thing for, and then they have to do it again later on. And although it's kind of a sort of journey episode in a way, because they're on their way to a particular location, it would have been a bit unrealistic for me if they had just got there with no problems in like 10 minutes. and sort of, to use a bit of a Game of Thrones term, sort of jetpacked there, in a way, if you remember that from...
Yeah.
What do you think of the pacing in terms of that?
It is... Yeah, I do agree with you with that. Although, as I said at the start, I did find this a little bit slow. It does make logical sense, because the fire that they're talking about and the fire that they're heading towards, which is the sort of next bit that comes up, they're obviously aware because it has been some way off in the distance. It's a bit like sort of seeing Mordor in some respects. There is a thing that's been off in the distance. And if it had been close enough for them to just be able to walk there in one day, the kids would have been there already. They would have gone out and, you would have known that some of them would have gone out and snuck out and tried to investigate it. Whereas whilst they're aware that it's there, it's not something that they could have got close enough to previously to know exactly what it was. So it sort of makes sense that they have this name for it, and it's that they would have to stop on the way and rest overnight. Otherwise, they would know more about it by this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I quite like the way they set that all up. Speaking of this particular place, the group spots thick smoke in the distance, and they explain to Silas that it's the Blaze of Gory, the name of the episode, or BOG, that people have been talking about since everything fell apart. It's believed to be a large tire fire, which we see at the end of the episode. Iris believes they can get through it, but Hope wants to go around it, which is going to take you a lot longer. Iris argues they'll save 60 miles if they go straight through, and says they should at least see if it's doable. The kids continue towards the blaze. Elton wants to continue Dr. Bavola's migration experiments, tagging walkers with paint. Elton comes face to face with an empty who has bees spitting out of its mouth, and he uses a paint can to fend it off. So, and then we'll talk about the treehouse thing in a minute. So, yeah, them sort of planning how they're going to get to where they're going to get to. Two of them have got different ideas. They're trying to sort of negotiate what's the best option. To me, it's the riskier option to go straight through, but it will save you a lot of time, because if you end up going around this thing, it'll just take you so much longer, and then that's it will create a different problem. So you got a problem either way, because you'll either have to go through it and deal with these walkers, which they have to do, or you go around the thing, which means you still might bump into walkers anyway, but it'll take you longer. So I thought that was interesting to see, again, these young characters who aren't really familiar with doing this necessarily, trying to sort of figure out how to get through it. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, and I think the kids sort of saying, well, we should at least go and check it out. If there is a way through, we should go through it, because it's going to save us a whole load of time. The Bee Walker, though, we need to kind of, what a great invention that was. That's got Greg Nicotero written all over it. That has. I'm assuming he's doing the monsters in this as well, but that was just a great invention. It's just wonderfully fun, and not something we've seen before. And I think that's always the issue with these shows, of them, the Walking Dead shows, as they go through trying to come up with various different types of walkers as they go through. Like, we've seen a lot of kind of moss walkers in this that have obviously been out for a very long time, and they've been in a sort of wet, boggy area, and they've got bits of like greenery and stuff growing all over them. We've seen a lot more of that. But I thought the ones that have had like bees settle inside them, what a great idea that was. I really like that.
I like it. Yeah, and then you've had like all the two different ones that Jadis made in Walking Dead, the one that had like spikes on its body, and then I can't remember what the other one was, but yeah, she made two different sort of ones, didn't she? So I did quite like that as well. Yeah, and it's not something. Bees in the walker's mouth isn't something you necessarily expect, and the group clearly didn't either. So that was quite good. So, but yeah, has to try and use a paint sort of spray to get away from it. I thought that was good, but hey, you can only use what you've got immediately to hand, and that was what he had. So I guess you have to try and use that.
Yeah,
which
and
is
again,
interesting.
it avoids any of them actually killing any of the walkers, or
Yeah,
killing
because they
in
don't
quotes,
kill
any
any
of the
walkers in the episode. Yeah, so
No.
they do try to in a minute though with this particular bowling ball. So the group find
Yes.
a treehouse to sleep in, and Bond using a bowling ball. Hope found and named Big Mo. The noise attracted the bee walker. They tried dropping the ball on it, but it doesn't work. It sort of takes half its face off almost, but doesn't kill it. They go to sleep, but Hope gets up in the night to try and get rid of it. And in the morning, the kids reach the BOG Blaze of Glory to the vote to try and sneak through it, and we'll talk about that in a second. Loved the effect that this bowling ball had on it. Kind of took half its face off, but I guess didn't destroy enough of its brain, and it's still kind of walking around. And then they play a little bit of Monopoly as well. So which is
yes,
kind of
yes,
cool.
they do. And the noise attracts this sort of walker, and and again you see one of the kids. You see Hope thinking, this thing's making noise downstairs, and it's sort of, she wants to kind of go and try and get rid of it, but again can't do it, and he's struggling with it, and ends up sort of, I can't remember what she ends up doing with it. She sort of walks it away, doesn't it? And
puts it into this sort of ditch thing, which
she
ends up falling down by
it.
accident, and then she manages to get away. So who makes Monopoly? Is it Hasbro?
I think so, yes.
Because I was kind of thinking in the moment, okay, I wonder how much they paid for that.
I'm sure there is a Walking Dead Monopoly game.
Maybe, yeah. That's not the one they used, but yeah. So I don't know. Maybe they have a deal there in some way, shape, or form. But again, not something we've really seen.
Yeah,
in Walking Dead.
It's Hasbro, and there is a Walking Dead Monopoly game. In fact, I think there's a couple of them. There's one that's based on the comics, and there's one that's based on the TV show. So
cool. What do you think of this time they spend in the treehouse? I guess.
Yeah, well, it was kind of a cute little bit of bonding, and you got to see them just being kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're 15, 16-year-old kids. You got to see them just be 15, 16-year-old kids. They're playing a board game and messing around and making noise, and just being kids, and not really having been slapped in the face by life properly yet.
Yeah, it's a good way to sort of break the episode up slightly, because they have a couple of walker encounters, or because they have the two of them, because there's the bee walker, and then there's the one at the start of the episode, and then obviously the paint one comes back to this treehouse, finds them, and it's a good sort of way to break that up a little bit. You've got these two little sort of zombie set pieces, and then you've got this moment to sort of breathe with the characters and develop them a little bit more, and also find out, I know it's not something too big, but something a little bit about their past with this bowling ball, and them just sort of bonding a little bit, I thought was quite good. So again, I thought the pacing was pretty good here. So Felix and Huck also camped for the night. Felix sneaks off to his parents' house. His parents are undead inside, but he opts not to go inside and kill them, quote unquote. We can probably tell that they're dead. Well, we know that they are, because you see this sort of walker through the window, and just the way it's kind of shambling around, you can tell that I think that's probably his dad that's dead. And then he doesn't want to go in and deal with it, which I don't entirely blame him for. He doesn't really need to go in there necessarily and put himself through that, because they're in this house, they're not really going anywhere necessarily. But again, another good way to sort of connect back to the flashback and keep that in the episode for just that one more kind of scene, and add a little bit more to Felix's character. I thought was quite good.
Yeah.
So what do you think of him going back to the parents' house?
Yeah, I quite like this as a sort of round up to that relationship with his parents, and the fact that there is, he could come across as kind of just this hardened soldier, but you're getting this backstory of how he seemingly, he was still trying to connect to his parents even after all the terrible things they did to him, and at the end he can't go in and end them, and put them out in their misery, or whether he just doesn't want to face it, or I don't know. But I sort of understand why he maybe doesn't want to go in and do it.
Yeah.
But it's a good sort of rounding off to that bit of his story arc, I think.
Do you think they'll revisit this again with Felix, or do you think this is a good way to end that mini kind of arc with him?
I don't know. I suspect his parents may come up. We may get a bit more of sort of Felix later on, of how maybe he got involved with the group and stuff. But yeah. I mean, I think maybe this is the parents sort of stuff he's possibly rounded off by this.
Yeah, I don't think there's too much.
Bearing in mind, I mean, you've got to be careful how much you spend on this stuff, because we have only got 20 episodes to tell the stories of these characters so far.
10 seasons.
So yeah, you've got to be a bit tighter than maybe you would have been otherwise.
Yeah, which will be an interesting challenge for the show as well. So, because we've only got 10 episodes left. So, we shall see. Back at the BOG, Blaze of Glory, the kids sneak through and think they have made it, only to discover an even bigger blaze and more empties. Elton suggests that one of them sets off an old tornado siren on a nearby roof to create a diversion. Iris rejects the idea of using someone as bait and begins to wonder if she made the wrong choice coming up with this entire plan. Hope tells her sister she should be proud, though, and suggests they all sleep for the night before continuing. As everyone else rests, Hope makes her way through the blaze of glory, this smoke, and the episode ends as she walks through, her fate unknown until next week. I'm sure she'll be fine, but it's a good little tension kind of thing. I was kind of thinking as we're watching, particularly this episode, and as we're facing some more walkers and that sort of thing, I know it might be a little bit of a grim question, but which of these kids do you think might die first? Or if it will, I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I mean, Silas has got kind of out of all the characters, I think Silas is possibly the one that's most likely to go, because he's maybe less well developed. Plus, I think he's the one that is likely to stick himself in danger to try and save the others.
Possibly,
as a sort of going out in a kind of blaze of glory sort of thing. I think he's the one that I think is most likely to step up and trying to put himself in between him and his friends, because he's this shy kid, he's this big kid, he's this shy kid, he's clearly not the brightest of all of them, and I just think that if you're going to lose one, he seems like the one that's most likely probably to put himself in danger to try and save the others. Maybe one of the sisters. If one of the sisters is going to die, it's probably going to be Iris, I would have thought. I'm hoping Elton makes it through, although because I think he's an interesting character. I think Hope's the one more likely to stay alive out of the group. I think Iris is more likely to put herself in harm's way to try and prove a point and getting herself killed for it.
Possibly, yeah. No, I'd agree with both characters that you've chosen there. I don't think any of them are particularly safe. It doesn't really feel like they are, but those two are probably the most likely, I think. Yeah. So, I just want to go back to these two little set pieces here, or one set piece really, and then kind of just the end of the episode. Them kind of sneaking through all this smoke, the part where they get to the buses, and they're sneaking through all this smoke, and they have to make some big decisions. I mean, they're all four of their lives are at stake. They do have these weapons on them, but as we've seen, they're not quite capable yet of using them, which again I think is very realistic. You can see how scared and nervous these characters are, which again I think is realistic because of at the point of development that these characters are at. And it was just interesting to see, especially when they got to the point where, because even as you were watching the episode, you didn't know like which way they had to go, which way was for them was to go forward to like get out this place, or what was left or right or whatever, because they'd gotten themselves so sort of mixed into that particular area, where even because I think one of them says like, "Oh, does anybody know where the gate is?" And they just couldn't really see, which was again realistic because the smoke was like covering their vision almost completely.
And
so
this also flashes back a little bit to Felix's lessons as well, where he's basically talking about the fact that if you've got the sun, you have a compass, and they knew they needed to head east because that's where the gate was, but the smoke's blocking out the sun, so they have no idea which way they're supposed to be going at that point because they can't see the sun to direct them. So so it shows the sort of the training versus the actual practicality of it, trying to put the training into practice and where that falls down, I think, to a certain extent.
It kind of reminds me, I think it was the season 9 finale when they had all that snow and it was sort of blocking their view in a way. I think whenever you do anything with like snow or smoke or sort of mist in that kind of way, and you're sort of blocking the character, both your view because you can only see what they can see, and the character's view, and then you put walkers into that mix. I just think that's a very, very interesting idea, and I thought this was quite effective with that. So I really liked it. Again, I'm someone that likes to look out for these zombie set pieces and see what they can come up with, and I really enjoyed it. It was a good sort of tension builder as well. So but they finally managed to get out of there, and then of course Hope goes through the smoke alone at the end of the episode. So very, very good end. I like where they're going with it at the moment, and we will see how things continue next week. Let's move into some feedback for the episode as well. One question which isn't really related particularly to the show, but more to the two of us, so I thought it'd be good to include it here. By the way, if you have any thoughts, feelings, questions, comments, or maybe concerns about any of the Walking Dead shows, or really anything related to Entertainment Talk, whether it be the shows, games, or films that we covered, or a particular question about Entertainment Talk, feel free to write in. Matthew at entertainmenttalk.org, Twitter eTalkUK, there's a contact page, and you can also look for information in your show notes. Ian says, "Hey fellas, not to sound grim, but just wondered what would happen to Geektown or eTalk if something happened to one of you." In terms of the Entertainment Talk side of things, I have given David access because you've gone in the back end of the website and done certain things to like certain different coding things and all that to the website. I obviously trust you to do that and have given you that access. I don't know what would happen to all the podcast necessarily. I have no idea. Really.
I mean, the fundamental problem of in both cases, I mean, the Entertainment Talk is very much you. The podcasts are driven by you, and in the same way, Geektown is very much driven by me, and I'm the main person that does all the dates and stuff. I mean, so I honestly don't know. I mean, I really couldn't tell you. I mean, there are logins and stuff for it. Whether I'd hand that off to somebody, if I got sick or something, then yes, I could hand it off to somebody. But,
yes, I mean, it's different because you do more. I mean, you do the Geektown podcast, and then pretty much updating the air dates and stuff. With me, it's 4 or 5 different podcasts in the week. I wouldn't expect you to like suddenly host all of those podcasts and then do Geektown and everything else, because then you'd sort of be doing almost like 2 full-time jobs, and so I wouldn't expect you to kind of do that because you've already got Geektown full-time, and then you don't want to add Entertainment Talk on top of that. I don't know what that would mean with the shows with Robert. I have no idea. But but
I mean, you've got a few other people that are involved in that shows as well. So I mean, it's possible that maybe we could organise something that would keep some of them going. Because you've got people like Robert involved, and you've got a couple of other co-hosts as well. So then maybe the co-host could keep those going.
We shall, hopefully we won't have to find that out for a very long time.
Yeah, so. hopefully we don't never really have to find that out, but yes.
Yeah, because I intend to do this as long as possible, at least at the moment.
Yeah.
So, nothing's going to be ending anytime soon, hopefully.
Yes.
So, but it's something to question and to consider, so there you go. Yasmin, Yasmin says, So now that we have had the start of all three of the shows, which one do you think started the best out of The Walking Dead, Fear the Walking Dead, and Walking Dead World Beyond? I think this is a bit of a fairer question in terms of just saying, okay, compare the three shows, because one of them's got 6 seasons, one of them's got 10, and one of them's got 2 episodes. So comparing them overall, I don't think is particularly fair, because how do you compare, 100 and... I don't know how many episodes Walking Dead's got, but 10 seasons worth and then like 2 episodes of this. I think The Walking Dead started the best. I think World Beyond has started better than Fear. And the main reason I say that is because Fear did actually sort of not do what it was supposed to do at the start, because it was supposed to be this look at, okay, what happened from, how did this all kind of unfold in America? Not like in Atlanta necessarily, but just in America, you know, when Walker started breaking out and, you know, society sort of collapsed. And they did that in the first couple of episodes and then just sort of skipped over the rest of it. So it didn't really... Yeah. It sort of went to do what the premise it was supposed to do, skipped over it, and then kind of became, okay, another Walking Dead show in a different place with different characters. I still like what it's ended up being, but it did skip over its original premise. So, with what World Beyond is trying to do with these young characters out in the wild and all that, at least so far, 2 episodes in, I think they're doing a very good job of that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think it's very difficult to top The Walking Dead as the being, you know, that was the strongest opener, I think, most definitely. I would agree with you. I think that certainly it's difficult to judge the first episode of the shows, but I mean, as concepts, I think you're entirely right. With Fear, you know, whilst I'm enjoying it now, I said on Geek Town this week, I kind of stopped watching it about halfway through the second season and only recently picked it up again and made an effort to binge my way through it. And you get to the 4th season where they introduce Morgan and it becomes an entirely different show. Yeah. And, you know, I think I described it as basically being like the A-Team in the zombie apocalypse, because you've got this group of ragtag people that are traveling around trying to help other people, led by Morgan, and you've got these very interesting character types. It becomes a hugely better show once you kill off the original family, and which, you know, as I said, nothing against the actors that were in that. I just think there is a far more interesting story that they found with Morgan and that group than there was with that original family. They just run that course, and like you say, it had that initial problem of, it started off, you know, you wanted to see that collapse of society. And whilst they did that for a couple of episodes, they got bored very quickly and it just became a sort of second tier Walking Dead show, with, like you say, the same characters in a different area. And whilst that was interesting to a certain point, it wasn't really what it was supposed to be. And, you know, now it's still not what it originally was intended to be, but it is far more interesting, you know, and it's a far more hopeful show than maybe the main show is in places, because, you know, you've got this group that are striving to do something better and make the world a better place, whereas, you know, the main show is you know, more about just surviving, I think. I mean, they are, but
the main show is more about trying to adapt to the original comic book as well, so they had that goal in mind that they were, and, you know, it's done it for better and for worse. In certain things they've done better than what the comics done, and some things they've done worse than what the comics done. So you've had mixed results at times, but it's the show's in a quite good place now. I just think that with Fear, they sort of accidentally stumbled into doing a different show than they had the idea to do, and it turned out the idea that they've stumbled into is good, but it's just not the original idea that they had. Because as these main characters at that point in the first season were sort of going through the streets and seeing people getting eaten and whatever else, and seeing the collapse of society, the characters almost kind of ran away from that and then just did something else. So it's a bit of a shame, really, because I would still like to see the complete collapse of society, and we sort of got like half of it, and then they ran away from it.
That's sort of, arguably, that is what they would do. You know, you would, but I think that's just, you know, they pick this family to follow, and if you're just some random family, then yeah, you would run away from whatever the danger was. So it sort of makes sense, but that's not really what the story was supposed to be. What you wanted them was to almost stay with, I don't know, the military side of things, or and maybe we'll get that, maybe with the Three Circles people, maybe at some point down the line we'll get a show which is completely focused on them and we get to see it from their point of view, and maybe that is something which follows, you get to see almost because we're assuming there's probably some military or government involvement with those people. So maybe we will get to see some of that of that sort of response to it later on. But yeah, they've still not quite managed to do what the promise of that original Fear the Walking Dead series was. But yeah, I mean, I love Fear now. I think what they're doing with it. I mean, I really enjoyed the 4th and 5th seasons. I thought they were really good.
Yeah. I think as well what they could do with that anthology thing is, I know this kind of sounds a bit dark and grim, but I would like to see, let's say you got like a shopkeeper owner or something, and they start to see, things are happening outside, and they have to, like, I don't know, lock themselves in that shop, and then you get a bit more of the panic and the kind of fear of the start, because that's what they sort of missed. You got small pieces of it, and then they just didn't kind of follow through. So, but I think we've kind of answered that question. But yeah, I would go Walking Dead did the best start, and then probably World Beyond, and then Fear. So
yeah.
And we will see what else comes next in the future. But that's it. That's it for this episode of the Walking Dead UK podcast. You can find, of course, everything else that we do on entertainmenttalk.org. If you would like to listen to this week's episode of Geektown, it's available for you to go and listen to that. You can, of course, look out for the new Geektown Radio episodes on Tuesdays. You can either search for Geektown on iTunes and podcast services, or you can head over to geektown.co.uk for all of your up-to-date, reliable TV and film news. So check that out as well through Geektown. If you'd like to support this podcast and support Entertainment Talk, you can head over to our Patreon page. There is the $1 and $3 level tiers for instant ad-free podcast and review options. Amazon affiliate link if you're shopping on Amazon. I think they're doing their Amazon sale, Prime Day sale thing at the moment, so if you want to get involved with that and support us along the way, you can use our affiliate link. We can get a small cut of what you spend, but it won't cost you anything extra. iTunes feed, like I said, Geektown, search for that on iTunes and podcast services, and you can also search for Entertainment Talk on there as well. You can either subscribe to the individual feeds or the main feed, so you get sent all the new episodes, but that is entirely up to you. But please rate, review and subscribe to those iTunes feeds as well. You can find Bex doing fun and interesting stuff over on Twitch. If you search for Trista Bytes, that's Trista, Bytes, as long as she hasn't broken something, a piece of equipment or a part of herself, or the internet's gone down maybe, which she tweeted out earlier today. So hopefully her stream went well today. So but you can find her over on Twitch if you search for Trista Bytes, Trista, Bytes. You can also use word of mouth, tell people about the website, iTunes feeds, Geektown, Trista Bytes and everything else. Just tell people that you know about all of that. Social media, you can do the same thing but through Facebook and Twitter, and if you can on different Facebook groups. And lastly, also look out for Let's Play Sundays, Iron Man, Last of Us 2, Crash Bandicoot stuff coming out, and all sorts of fun stuff as well. So keep your eyes out on everything that we do. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll be back next week for episode 3. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.